Welcome to episode 459 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Meyers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I am interviewing writer and screenwriting instructor Corey Mandell. He's had a long career in the business, both as a writer and an instructor. He works with a lot of writers, so he has a lot of insight into the current market, what's selling, and where the business is going. So we'll cover all of these topics and more today with that interview. So stay tuned for that. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can get that by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. I will teach you how to write a professional logline inquiry letter and how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. Really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So a quick few words about what I'm working on. So I'm in the final stages of putting together this large NFT project for the Rideshare Killer. I know I've been talking about it for a while now, but I got sidetracked with the film festival. So hopefully I can finish this up in the next few weeks and then start marketing it. I actually went to a blockchain summit here in Los Angeles this week just to learn a little more about crypto, NFTs, and blockchain, but also just to look at some of the influencers, see who's speaking on it. And those will be the people, at least some of the people that I will be reaching out once I get this project done and start to really market it. I just need to know who some of these people are, and I'm following them and learning from them as well. So hopefully I can add to the conversation with my own project. I'm also in the process of trying to figure out where I'm going to host the film festival next year. Now that I've been through the festival once, I have a pretty good idea about the economics of a festival like this. So it's not easy finding a cool location, trying to create a cool atmosphere or cool film festival. So you need a good location. But obviously I'm very restricted by budget because it's very difficult. It's just very difficult to rent a theater at a decent price here in LA. So I'm looking around on that. I've definitely got some good leads. Hopefully I'll have an announcement about that shortly. If you work at a theater or know someone who owns a theater, works at a theater, has insight into a theater in the Los Angeles area, definitely reach out to me. I'd love to talk to some other theater owners and just kind of see what kind of deals might be out there. You can always email me at info@sellingyourscreenplay.com. As I said, if you have any information on a local theater here in Los Angeles. Anyways, those are some of the things that I have been working on over the last few weeks. Now let's get into the main segment. Today, I am interviewing writer Corey Mandell. Here is the interview. Welcome back, Corey, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me today.
Thank you for having me.
So for the audience, you've been on the podcast previously in episodes 49, 78, and 143. So I definitely encourage people to check those out. I think in episode 49, we sort of talked about your origin story, how you got your start in the business. So if people are kind of curious on that, I definitely recommend checking out that episode, if not the other ones as well. So let's start out today's conversation in some of the changes you've seen in this post-COVID world. What are your thoughts on how COVID changed the screenwriting landscape?
So obviously during the first year in the lockdowns, all production basically froze. So it was just, they had so much, projects that they couldn't get made. And now we're seeing that point where they're exhausted their supplies of development. So there's a real, voracious hunger to buy more material. I think in the last 3 months, I've seen more of my students selling scripts and pitches than, any other 3-month period. And I've been doing this for about 15 years. So it's crazy right now because they've got to restock the coffers.
And who are most of these sales being made to? Like what sort of sales are they?
The majority of sales is going to the streaming platforms. For the first time now, something like 81% of all content is consumed on the streaming or paid premium cable platforms, not the free broadcast platforms. Just pretty crazy because obviously the networks are free and everyone has access to the networks and everyone has access to those platforms. And, as I'm sure you and your listeners know, on the feature space, in the last 10 days, I've seen 3 people sell feature scripts to the streaming companies, and they're either going to be streaming movies or hybrids. So like right now in the theaters is All Quiet on the Western Front, written by one of my students. And that is a Netflix production, and you can go see it in a theater and you can see it on Netflix starting perhaps today or tomorrow. So, they're doing that hybrid of making features putting them in theaters, but mainly using them on their platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And
So some of these sales that you're seeing from your writers, friends, just people in the industry, what is the level of their writing? And not so much in a subjective way. Oh, it's awesome. They're great writers. But what is the level of their experience? Are people breaking in? They've never sold anything. They're getting a sale to a company like Netflix. Are these writers that have been, beating the bush for a while? They have an agent, they have a manager, they've sold some lower budget stuff. What is sort of the pathway to making a sale at Netflix? What is the experience level of these writers?
yeah, so it is all ranges, but obviously anyone with a track record is going to have an advantage. Anyone with representation, and I'm sure your listeners know this, the main thing an agent or manager gives you is credibility. And so, for instance, for myself, without rehashing all the details, but my first sell was at Ridley Scott's production. Now, they weren't going to read my stuff and meet with me because of me. They did it because I was represented by Diane Cairns at ICM, who not only is a major agent, but she also represented, at the time, represented Callie Corey, who had written Thelma and Louise. Ridley Scott had won the Academy Award. She was an unknown writer at that time. So when Diane says, hey, I've got another unknown writer that can win you an Academy Award, you ought to read a script. Clearly, they're going to read the script. So obviously, having an agent or a manager is a big advantage. However, let me offer your listeners something that might be of help. So for the longest time as a teacher, what I focused on is helping writers improve their writing to write the kind of scripts that they need to be writing to break into the business. I wasn't focused on how you break yourself into the business because, obviously there's no one path. Everyone needs to find their own way. But I got frustrated over time because I found that I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. And I think that a lot of the information about what you should be writing and how to get it out is very outdated. The world changed. We can talk about COVID, but the world really changed about 6 years ago. And this is the industry like 3.0, and everyone is doing industry 2.0. We can talk about that in a minute. But I created a on-demand product. It's $99, but I'm going to offer it to all your listeners. I'll tell them how they can get it for free. So what this product does is it breaks down exactly what kind of scripts. When I say product, it's me, and it's several hours of content. So it breaks down what kind of scripts the current TV industry is looking for, what kind of scripts the feature industry is looking for, breaks down what's required to write those scripts, breaks down how to develop any skills that you currently aren't strong enough at. And it's not, the punchline isn't, oh, you got to take a class from me. That's certainly an option, but I give people other options, including options that don't cost money. Mm-hmm. It also covers, this is so important, confirming that you're writing at that level. And then it covers a topic which I think goes right to what you're asking, which is what I'm hearing from a lot of writers is, okay, we keep hearing that this is the golden age or the second golden age of writers. And we keep hearing that Netflix is spending $18 billion, Amazon spending $12 billion. You start throwing around the numbers and it is mind-boggling. And there's never been so many opportunities. Okay, we hear that. That's inspiring. But let me tell you what my reality is. My reality is when I go out to the industry, it seems like no one wants to read my script unless I have representation. So I reach out to agents and managers, and it seems like they will meet with me if I have a career. So there's this catch-22. Mm-hmm. What the hell do I do? I'll go into exactly the right strategy and how to invest your time and how most writers do it. So let me just get this out of the way, then we can continue on. Go to my website if you want, coreymandel.net. And there's a tab that says launch your career. And if you click on it, it takes you to this on-demand product. I don't remember the price. It's $99, it's $130, around $100. Let's create a coupon code right now for your listeners. What do you want to call it? You have the honor of labeling this coupon code.
SYS 100. That's our initials.
SYS 100. So here's what I'll do. I'll keep that coupon code active for 4 weeks after this episode airs. Just let me know when it drops. And once this drops for the next 4 weeks, when you check out, use SYS, all small capitals 100, and you will get all of that content for the low price of free. That is because you're smart enough to be listening to Ashley's podcast.
Well, thank you very much. I'm sure we'll get some people taking you up on that. So let's circle back. How do people use this information? What are people selling? What are they looking for?
The world, so I'm sure, as you know, and your listeners probably know, for the longest time, everything was paradigm driven. And everything was a formula. And so if we look at TV, and we'll talk about features too, but if you look at TV, it was the networks. And up until like 2005, that was the industry. And their model was the most number of viewers possible. They didn't care if you were actually paying attention. They just wanted you having their show on, because the higher the ratings, the more money. So they wanted shows that were not challenging, were easy to digest, you could have on in the background, because what they realized, like from the 1970s on, is that most people would come home, they'd be exhausted, they turn the TV on. It was almost like a companion. They'd make dinner, they do, and they'd have it on while they worked, they'd have it on while they did the laundry. So the shows were, it was the same structure over and over again, like a comedy or a police procedural. Because if you tuned out and you got busy and you looked back, you're like, oh, I could keep watching because I know the storyline. And if you went on vacation or you couldn't watch for a few weeks, each episode was self-contained, right? So there weren't narrative arcs. So because there was no DVRs, some of your really young listeners are like, what? No DVRs? And so it was all a specific paradigm, and they were creating comfort food. It was like macaroni and cheese, and everyone was doing it, and they'd have a higher concept or the right star. And that's all they wanted. They wanted you to write within these confines, but try to make it unique, but stay in the confines. Same thing with the summer movies, obviously, the comic book movies, the big broad comedies. They were all very paradigm driven. Were the only time you would see writers break from form and just write authentic characters and story were the award chasing prestige films. And when I was in film school in 1999, it's so funny because I was there to be a feature writer, and James Burrows was teaching this TV class, James Burrows. And some of my friends are trying to talk me into it. And I'll never forget, I'm like, oh, please. Like, I'm a feature writer. And the thought was, if you can't make it in features, you go into TV. Like, that was the mindset. I mean, boy, the world changed, like, 7 years later. But anyway, and then what changed everything, obviously, was streaming. And streaming changed everything. And so the whole model changed. So streamers don't care about aggregate number of people because they don't sell commercials. All they care about is that you keep subscribing. They're a magazine business, and you're paying a monthly subscription. So just think about this. If there's not a show on Hulu that you have to be watching, you don't subscribe to Hulu. If there's not something on Apple TV that you have to be watching, and people will turn off their subscriptions and turn it back on. And so what they need is a TV show or TV shows for different demographics that make somebody say, I got to pay to keep, watching this. And so what they're looking for are shows that create emotional attachment. Having a star doesn't matter. Having a high concept, that can help maybe get people to watch the first episode. But what they live or die by, and I work with a lot of showrunners, is follow through. And follow through is what percentage of people who watch the first episode watch all the episode. They want loyal, passionate viewers. And it can be 1 million. I mean, Seinfeld last episode, 74 million people watched it. That was a very successful metric at the time. You can create a show right now on a streaming network that gets 800,000 viewers, and it is incredibly successful if those 800,000 people watch every episode, because they can't market. It's saturated. There's too much content. So they need loyal, passionate viewers, which means that show has to matter to these people, and they're going to watch every episode, even though they have 1 million other possibilities competing for their interest. So what they now realize is everything is flipped upside down. It used to be create shows that everybody kind of likes, but doesn't offend anybody. Because when it's ratings driven, if you're watching a show and your very conservative or very liberal friend walks by, or your child walks by, or your grandmother walks by, or your super religious friend and your atheist friend walk by, they don't want any of those people to be offended. They want all of those people to be able to watch it. So they would never make any of the current shows would never have gotten made. Now it's the exact opposite. They need a core group of people to love and commit that show. And if other people are like, oh, Fleabag is too sexual, Breaking Bad is too violent, this show affronts my religious beliefs, great, don't watch it. Watch this show instead. They want shows that people can emotionally connect to. And this is now moving to features, because features in TV, because of the streaming platforms, are converging. And we're even seeing it with the big summer scripts that are selling. In the summer market, they haven't completely broken the form, but they are pushing it so much, it is like at the breaking point. And the features that I see sell to Hulu and Netflix and Amazon, they are more like TV in that there's something unique with the character of the story. There's like only that writer could have written it. It does not feel generic. And there's something that's just, if it's your cup of tea, it's going to really matter to you, and you're going to watch this thing. And that's how the whole industry changed. Like, it's the industry 3.0. And so much of what people have been trained and told to do is now outdated.
And I wonder, given sort of what you just said, and I've often wondered this, where do you think the direction of features is? Like, if you really boil down what you just said, why does Netflix even bother with features? Because they want this sort of stickiness. They want the people to return. And features, a 2-hour contained movie, is not. I mean, I guess if you could do something like, Monday night, ABC used to have Monday night at the movies, right, or something. So maybe you could do something like that.
But here's the thing: is that I get the question, but in this new world order, what they are looking for is that my platform has value to you, so you'll pay this monthly subscription. And this is what I believe is happening, and I hear it from people in the industry. And I think this is sort of the new trend within the trend, which is, so it wasn't that long ago that being able to binge watch something was a unique experience, and people were happy to pay these monthly subscription fees to have shows that they can binge. Also, it wasn't that long ago that suddenly the ecosystem included, shows like Fleabag and Russian Doll and Succession, like all these new kinds of unique shows and characters that never existed. And that was a time when there wasn't that many streaming platforms. So if someone had a subscription to Netflix, or they had a subscription to Hulu, they would probably just keep it. I think what's happened is there's a million streaming services and more coming all the time. They're all spending enormous amounts of money because they're trapped into doing that, given their business models. I think the novelty of all these unique, amazing shows has started to wear off. Not that we don't want to keep watching them, but the novelty is worn off. I think the experience of binge watching something, the novelty of that has worn off. So I actually think that creating a feature film experience that you can get at home is now a unique novelty. Sort of, it's sort of a newer add-on. Also, if you are watching All Quiet on the Western Front on Netflix, and they're promoting a Coen brother movie or some movie that's going to be dropping in 2 or 3 weeks, you're like, oh, I really want to see that movie. You're keeping your subscription to Netflix. That's all they care about, is that you keep your subscription to Netflix, because you see the value in doing that. So I think that they're aggressively moving into the streaming film section, because it's a novel, it's sort of a more of a unique experience, and it helps give value. My former assistant's brother wrote the film Palm Springs that Hulu dropped during the pandemic, and that got them on the map. People were talking, not that they weren't on the map already, but that got them a lot of subscribers. So that's what the whole thing is about.
Yeah. So again, I really get what you're saying about these numbers with the series. There's 8 episodes, 10 episodes. It's very easy for them to track how the stickiness of how many people are getting to that 8th episode. Whereas with features, the example you just gave, they show a Coen Brothers-esque movie and advertise the next Coen Brothers movie. That's going to be much more difficult to track.
But they're going to know how many people watched it.
No, for sure. But the stickiness does not, like I go on Netflix sometimes and I just find something to watch. It's not necessarily the same things. Anyways, though, I guess I just take a step back, and I do worry that features may become sort of a lost art. Like I think that there's a chance that because of just exactly what I was saying, the financial pressures make features sort of a lost art, but perhaps that's many, many years in the future.
But wait, it's just a real quick jump in. I mean, we're seeing record attendance in theaters right now.
Yeah, no, okay, so you're right. So I think that will always be an experience, but that's the big studio movies. And we've seen that now for 20 years with the studios, where they're going more for the tent poles. So we're not seeing those $20 million, $40 million movies.
Right. What I would say is, at least the way I see it, is good news, which is you're absolutely right for a lot of reasons we don't need to get into, and I'm sure quite detail. It bifurcated, and so it was the right now there's 2 feature markets. There's the big tentpole movie market, and then there's the load up on the stars and chase the awards. And then that middle market has basically disappeared. But that middle market now exists in the streamings. And I think that's part of the reason they're doing it, because there's an audience for that. There's always been an audience for that. It's not an exciting audience for a major exhibitor chain. It's an exciting audience for Hulu. So I actually think the good news is that the streaming platforms are going to be where those middle movies now exist. So that means writers can write those movies.
Yeah. No, hopefully you're right. I do hope you're right. So taking this a step back with with screenwriters, how they should sort of approach this. One of the things that I feel like when I watch some of these, especially when you watch those, 8 episodes or 6 episodes limited series, I often think, this really should have just been a feature film. It wasn't really enough. So as a writer, how do you make those determinations? You've got an idea that you feel is pretty expansive, but how do you know? Is it a 2-hour, a 90-minute idea, or is it something that you really can stretch out to 6 or 8 or 12 episodes?
That's a great question. And I actually think a big mistake that I see, and a lot of the managers who semi-writers complain about, is that there are a lot of writers who they're feature writers, or they have feature ideas, but they decide, I got to do this as a TV show because it's easier to sell it that way, which is not as true as it used to be. But that aside, look, here's what I would say. Again, it used to be that there were 2 or 3 forms that you had to plug all your ideas in. There was the 30-minute comedy, the 60-minute drama, and the feature. And whatever you wanted to say, you had to put it into one of those holes. And now everything's different. And I think this is the best time to be a writer, because whatever it is you want to say, you get to pick the form that best serves what you want, the experience you want us to have. If it's 4 episodes and done, you can do that. If it's 8 episodes and done, you can do that. If it's 7 years of 25 episodes, you can do that. It could be 30 minutes and be dramatic. It could be 60 minutes and be comedic. So what I always tell writers is, especially if you have a feature background and you want to get into the TV market, I would say do it for the right reasons and not the wrong reasons. Don't do it because you've heard it's so much easier, there's so much money, there's so much more being sold. That was 2-3 years ago. There's still more action in TV than features, but features is catching up, and there's so much competition in TV, and there's still not as much competition in features. If you're just making a business decision, it's not so clear cut anymore. So I would tell someone, if you're doing a TV show, it's got to be because you want to be doing a TV show. And then I would say, when I work with a writer, one of the questions I'll say, if I hear some ideas you hear, and when you work with the writers, this is clearly a TV show. It's expansive. It has all these different, you can't do this as a feature. Great. But it's not uncommon that I'll hear an idea and I'll be like, this could be a feature. Then I always ask them, why isn't this a feature? Why aren't you doing this as a feature? And they need to have a good answer. And, well, I want to do it as a TV show is not a good answer. So I would ask a writer is, if your idea could be done as a feature, it's probably not a TV show. So you need a reason why this can't be done as a feature, why it can't be done in a self-contained, intensive 100-minute experience. And if you don't have a good answer for that, guess what? You have a feature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's an excellent answer to that question. Um, so let's back up. You had mentioned too, you think there's some misinformation about still out there about how to sell scripts and kind of break into the market. So what is your basic template for somebody if they arrive in Hollywood, maybe they've written a few scripts, but given the year 2022, everything that's changed, what do you think? I know your sort of start was as an assistant. You started working in the business and sort of networked that way. TikTok, I've been messing, my kids are on TikTok, and I'm frankly very impressed. And I think there's a lot of potential for writers on stuff like TikTok, YouTube. My own path, I'm out here making indie films myself, writing, directing, producing into films. That's a potentially a viable option. But what do you tell people? Writing specs, that's another option. Just writing specs and just hitting the pavement, sending it to agents and managers, hoping you get some traction that way. But what do you tell people these days? What is sort of the template for breaking in?
So I think the templates never change. So what I would say is the standard way is you learn and confirm that you are writing scripts that are at the industry standard, are unique and impactful. And that then question two is, how do you get people to read those scripts? And sending it out with query letters to agencies or managers is so 7 years ago. That's not what you want to be doing. But putting that aside, it's writing those scripts. Here's what happens. There's the shortcut. So if you go back in time, the first couple of people that started doing webisodes, taking stories and just putting them online, they got all these views. It got the industry's attention, and the industry's like, wow, look at what they were able to accomplish on this limited medium. Let's bring them in and meet with these people. And some of them got really big writer director deals. And then everyone's like, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to create webisodes and break in the business. And no one else did, because it was only those first early movers. It was the first people to do it. They got all the attraction. They got all the eyeballs, and then everyone started doing it. And it was not a shortcut anymore. Podcasts, when podcasts started, some of the early people who were doing podcasts who had something interesting got and have huge followings because they were the first one in the space. And again, the industry started to pay attention to that. Look at what they've been able to do just talking to people. I wonder if this could be a TV show. I wonder if this could be a movie. I wonder if we can hire this person. And there were 6 or 7 writers that broke in that way. And then everyone I knew was like, I'm going to start a podcast and break in that way. And none of them broke in that way, because you've got it with these technologies. If you're one of the first people in there and you can create a buzz, great. So TikTok, maybe right now there are going to be some people who are going to get some traction off of TikTok, and then everyone's going to hear about it and everyone's going to go on TikTok, and that's not going to work anymore. So my suggestion is you focus on the scripts. Now, if you want to spend 20% of your time trying to get your voice and an audience in TikTok or podcasting or whatever form you want to do, great. That is a shortcut, and that might work. It probably won't, but it might. But spend 80% of your time focused on writing the sample scripts that can launch your career, and then figure out how to get people to read those scripts, because that is how 98% of writers are going to break into the business. That's the classic traditional way. Also, here's the thing. Someone's on TikTok and they are really great at promoting themselves. They get some attention and they get some meetings around town. I see this all the time. If they don't have an absolutely exceptional writing sample or two, it isn't going to matter. And I get those writers signing up for my workshops all the time. So if you want to be just like you're a writer director. If someone came to you and they're like, I want to be a director, direct something and prove that you have value. And if someone's like, I want to be a writer, the really cool thing is you don't need any money. You don't need actors. You don't need equipment. You need to write some scripts that blow people away. That's the reality. And so too many people come to LA and they get all excited about promotion and all these like ways they can get their message or them, but it isn't going to matter if you don't have the goods.
Yeah, for sure. But just take a step back and let's reframe it a little bit, in the sense that in some ways I now see these people on YouTube and TikTok, they're not even necessarily trying to break into Hollywood. They're just creating a platform for writing and stuff. I had a producer on a couple weeks ago that had worked with the Dude Perfect guys. I think those guys are probably worth $100 million. Mr. Beast is probably worth, hundreds of millions of dollars. So it's not even necessarily a platform platform to break in. It's a platform in and of itself that you can do creative writing and potentially make a living. I know going through these independent films, one of the things I run into as I'm doing them is editors. There's millions of editors now in Hollywood that are pumping out all of this content for all of these TikTokers and YouTubers. So, there has to be people also writing that sort of stuff. Just that's the end all in itself.
But the examples you gave in YouTube, those people, they have unique, crazy content that's connecting to people, and they started earlier on when it was easier to get attention. I'm not saying,
but there's examples. Darman is one my kids have run into.
Absolutely.
But he wasn't an early adopter. I think he's really been the last 3 years he's taken off.
Absolutely. But here's the thing. And I'm not trying to encourage or discourage anyone to do anything. So first off, my focus, and the writers I work with, they want to be TV writers and feature writers. So this is something different. But yeah, I mean, if someone wants to be a content creator and want to use a platform like YouTube and monetize it, absolutely that can happen. I would say for every example you give me of someone who's making significant money doing that in the last 3 to 5 years, I could give you 5 million examples of people who tried and aren't making that amount of money. It's not to say that someone who's listening to this doesn't have something really unique and they start throwing it up on YouTube and it catches fire and they become really awesome. And once again, it kind of goes to this whole thing about streaming and how streaming changed everything. But my expertise is working with writers who want to be TV writers and feature writers. So and I certainly can't give intelligent advice to someone who wants to be the next, major YouTube influencer.
So, and that's the question though. Ultimately, if you're just a young person that wants to be creative and do creative writing, and exactly, it's not really my expertise either, but I suspect in the year 2022, it's easier to make a living as a YouTube content creator than it would be as a screenwriter, breaking in and becoming a screenwriter. And so again,
I don't know that I would agree. I mean, I know a lot of people who've been playing the YouTube thing, and I think it's not necessarily as lucrative as people think. If you really look at what it takes and what the kind of, you could be absolutely right, but I don't know. I mean, I've had in the past 5 years, over 2,500 of my writers launch writing careers. They get paid. They have insurance. They have pensions. They're making good money. I don't think there's 2,500 people. And that's just me. I'm just one teacher. I don't know. I mean, given the amount of money on content, look, I certainly don't want to give the message to your listeners that it's easy.
None of this is easy to do. To do anything creative and get paid for it is never going to be
easy. I think it, if 100 people said, I'm going to make money as a YouTube content creator, and they just went all out for 5 years to do that, and they're really smart and really talented, and 100 people have the same attitude towards breaking in the TV or feature film business, I think you're going to see a much higher percentage in the second group than the first group. But maybe in the first group, the 2 or 3 people who really, really nail it, they might make enormous amounts of money. I don't know. But
and I think
I don't.
What always amazes me, obviously the Dude Perfect guys are famous, Darman, there's some Mr. Beast. Those are the type of things. But I know a lot of guys that are making $50,000 a year on YouTube, making $80,000 a year on YouTube. There's just tons of those people out there. Well, we don't hear about them because they're not that famous, but they are, scraping out a living, doing creative work. And I don't know. I mean, you'd use the example, 100 people trying to be screeners, 100 people, things. I bet if you had 100 people that really want to be content creators on a TikTok or things, I bet you could get as high as 50. You're going to be lucky if you get 10 of those screenwriters in 5 years making a living screenwriting. I think again, but what do we know? We are getting out of our expertise, but
it's a great time. It's a great time to be a young person because you got a lot of options. I think my advice would be just figure out what kind of life you want and figure out what you want to be producing. Figure out what you like. If you think Avenue A is easier and more likely, but Avenue B is what I really want to be doing, my advice is spend 3 years all in on Avenue B. And if it doesn't work out, you can reassess and always go back to the other option. But I just think my advice to writers, and I wish I took this because I didn't do it this way, but just step back, figure out what kind of life you want, figure out what creativity means to you, what you want to be producing, what is going to be the most meaningful to you, and then just figure out what it takes to be successful and go for it. And then give yourself a fair amount of time. And if it's not working out, absolutely, you can always shift focus.
Yeah, sound advice for sure. One of the things I heard about a couple weeks ago, one of the big TV fellowships, I think it was the Warner Brothers, but don't quote me on that. It got canceled and then it got reinstated. And one of the things that occurred to me is, and I'm just curious, have you heard anything or things? But one of the things that occurs to me is if they're starting to cancel something, like even though they reinstated it, clearly they don't look at it as a valuable resource for harvesting or finding new writers. It's clearly sort of on their back burners, and it seemed more like they just got pressured into putting it back. Do you get any sense on that? Is because that's always been a big way of breaking into television, is getting, getting highly placed on these fellowships. What's your take on that in the year 2022?
I think that those are still viable options. I think they're less. I think it means less than it used to. And again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but it's because a lot of the fellowships were built and created in a world of paradigm-driven TV, and that is not of interest. And so I think a lot of the so I get people coming to me to work with me, and they get upset because they're like, look, I went through this program, or I paid all this money for this, and now I'm realizing that what I was taught is wrong, and I wasted all this time and money. And it's like, no, wait, it wasn't wrong. What you were taught was right for that world, but the world changed dramatically, and big institutions can't change that quickly. And so I think that a lot of the MFA programs and a lot of the fellowships, they are training writers how to win in a war that ended 5 years ago. And so I think there's going to so that is, I think, what's happening. That said, I mean, I know 2 writers that just went through the fellowship and got staff. So it's certainly, I think if anyone's chasing the fellowships and they can get in, they should feel excited. It's still, it may not be the golden ticket that it once was, but it's at least a silver ticket, and a silver ticket doesn't suck. So it's not a bad thing. But I think everything you're talking about is a reflection of the world changed because of broadband and streaming. It changed everything. And the reality is we had the same business model for 70 years. And now it got disrupted and destroyed. And the new business model is really in its infancy. And so we're really very, very early on in the entertainment industry, like 3.0. And that's something that a lot of people don't realize, is that, again, everything's different. And you really have to understand what's going on today, why it's going on, and what you need to do to give yourself the best chance. Okay,
I'm going to throw you a curveball question here. Are you at all into crypto and NFTs? You have any thoughts on sort of the future of how those are going to merge with films?
No, I guess I have people telling me all the time. I don't get it.
It's not your expertise. I got you.
Not my expertise. And I'm sure, like, 10 years from now, I'll be like, darn it, I should have put all my money into blah, blah, blah. But not really. I mean, I know what it is, but not really up to speed on it.
Yeah. And that's where I'm asking people as they come on the podcast, if anybody has, because I do think that there is potentially exactly what you're saying. 10 years down the road, there is going to be something. So I'm trying to get ahead of the curve on that.
When you do, will you let me know?
Exactly. So I like to wrap up these interviews by asking the guests, is there anything you've seen recently that you really could recommend to our screenwriting audience? Netflix, Hulu, HBO, anything that's out there that people can find?
I'll give 2 recommendations. One recommendation I thought was really interesting was The Bear. Have you seen that on Hulu?
No, I haven't.
So here's what I think is really interesting about The Bear is it goes back to what we were talking about. So for the longest time, we had 3-camera comedies, situational comedies. It's a single location, 3 cameras, and it's just really played for the jokes. And that is really like a dinosaur now. It's gone away, and that's not, people want authenticity. They want characters. So The Bear is a 30-minute show on Hulu, and it's structured a lot like a 3-camera comedy, and it's not a broad comedy, and it isn't it's mostly in a single location in a workplace. It's a short order kitchen, but they do sometimes go home with character. So it's not, but it's mostly feels like a traditional 3-camera comedy, but it's not a comedy. It is a really intimate character story. There's some comedy in it, but it's a drama or dramedy with really great characters, and it's all about family and family dynamics and emotions. And it's just it's really captivating. And I really and also if someone looks at it, here's what's I think kind of interesting is, so the concept is a guy's brother dies, and he's a chef, but he goes to take over the family short order cook diner. And if someone came in and pitched me that, I'd be like, yeah, okay.
It's not high concept.
It's not high concept, right? And that's the point, is though that but the acting and the writing is amazing, the storytelling, and it's really a very honest look at human emotion and human relationships and how messy they are. And there is a little bit of comedy in it, and but it's really intense, and it's just so well written. And that's the point, which is nobody's watching The Bear because they're like, what a great concept. But people, if they find it or it's recommended to them and they start watching it, they get a unique emotional experience. Here's the thing about The Bear. And not everyone, that is listening might be their cup of tea. But here's the thing: if it is your cup of tea, it's like Fleabag. It's like Atlanta, in that it won't remind you of anything else, and you can't get that experience anywhere else. That's the key. And I'll throw one other thing out, which is there's a TV show. It's a German TV show, but it's on Netflix, called Babylon Berlin. And given what's going on in the world, it's unfortunately kind of relevant. The basic idea of the TV show was nobody's born a Nazi. People become Nazis. So it's set in Berlin in the late 1920s, the jazz, the hedonism. But we know what they don't know, which is the Nazis are going to be taken over within like 2 years. And the show follows these characters. It's a thriller. It's a mystery. It's a love story. It's epic. But the fun thing is, when you're watching it, some of these characters are going to become Nazis and some aren't. And you're trying to figure out who's going to become a Nazi and who's not. And the reason I throw it out is the 4th year is going to be dropping really soon on Netflix. And I wasn't a big fan of the 3rd year, but I think the first 2 years are great. So if anyone's looking for something and you're in this idea of like Berlin in the 1920s, moving into the Nazis, it's a really interesting show. It's a love story. It's a thriller. I don't own stock in the show, but I think it's an interesting show. So those are 2 shows, The Bear on Hulu and Babylon Berlin, if you're looking. And here's the thing I say about both shows: if you watch the first episode of either show and you're not totally into it, stop watching. These are shows that, like, after one episode, you know what you're getting, and you know if the show is for you or the show isn't for you.
Not. So perfect. Yeah, those are great recommendations. So let's talk about your workshops just quickly. What do you have coming up, and how can people find them?
Yeah, thanks. So I teach the professional screenwriting, TV writing workshop, and it teaches the specific skill sets to write the kind of scripts most in demand in the current marketplace. You can find out more about it at CoreyMandell.net. The only thing is you have to have some patience, because these things sell out. We are getting a lot of showrunners sending us their entire writing staffs. We're getting a lot of agents and managers sending us writers. So we have three workshops starting in January. 2 of them sold out. 1 of them is about to sell out. By the time this drops, it probably will be sold out, but we'll have them. We'll announce the March ones. So you do have to maybe wait 3 to 6 months to get in. But if you're interested, go to the website, CoreyMandell.net. There's a lot of information. What we teach is different from what anyone else teaches. Might not be a good fit for you, might be a good fit for you. You can check it out. And then if you want to do it, we can let you know when the next available session is. But unfortunately, people complain all the time, but it usually is about a 6-month wait to get in.
Perfect. So yeah, CoreyMandell.net. I'll put that in the show notes. And what's the best way for people to keep up with what else you're doing? Twitter, Facebook, are you on any of those platforms? I can grab
Best thing to do is I'm pretty old fashioned. Just go to CoreyMandell.net, sign up for the newsletter, and we'll keep you abreast of everything that's going on.
Perfect. Well, Corey, I really appreciate you coming on and talking with me today. Interesting conversations as always.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And it was a lot of fun.
Thank you. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Take care.
Bye. A quick plug for the SYS Screenwriting Analysis Service. It's a really economical way to get a high-quality professional evaluation on your screenplay. When you buy our 3-pack, you get evaluations at just $67 per script for feature films and just $55 for teleplays. All the readers have professional experience reading for studios, production companies, contests, and agencies. You can read a short bio on each reader on our website, and you can pick the reader who you think is the best fit for your script. Turnaround time is usually just a few days, but rarely more than a week. The readers will evaluate your script on 6 key factors: concept, character, structure, marketability, tone, and overall craft, which includes formatting, spelling, and grammar. Every script will get a grade of pass, consider, or recommend, which should help you roughly understand where your script might rank if you were to submit it to a production company or agency. We can provide an analysis on features or television scripts. We also do proofreading without any analysis. We will also look at a treatment or outline and give you the same analysis on it. So if you're looking to vet some of your project ideas, this is a great way to do it. We will also write your logline and synopsis for you. You can add this logline and synopsis writing service to an analysis, or you can simply purchase this service as a standalone product. As a bonus, if your screenplay gets a recommend or a consider from one of our readers, you get to list the screenplay in the SYS Select database, which is a database for producers to find screenplays and a big part of our SYS Select program. Producers are in the database searching for material on a daily basis, so it's another great way to get your material in front of them. As a further bonus, if your script gets a recommend from one of our readers, your screenplay will get included in our monthly Best Of newsletter. Each month we send out a newsletter that highlights the best screenplays that have come through our script analysis service. This is a monthly newsletter that goes out to our list of over 400 producers who are actively looking for material. So again, this is another great way to get your material out there. So if you want a professional evaluation of your screenplay at a very reasonable price, check out www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. Again, that's sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. On the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing actor turned writer-director Noah Segan. He just completed a vampire road movie called Blood Relatives. So we talk about that and how that film came together for him. And he's been working consistently as an actor for years. So we talk about that transition as well, how he moved from actor to writer-director. So keep an eye out for that episode next week. That's our show. Thank you for listening.